I'm David Scandura.
I'm Justus Burkett.
And today we're here to find out, is Peggy Sue Got Married the greatest movie ever made?
Your throbbing thrill hammer, your thing.
You mean my wang?
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
Why, I oughta.
A movie that is so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the world. I'm David Scandura, joined as always by my co-host and drummer of my new thrash metal band, Throbbing Thrill Hammer, Justus Burkett.
Your throbbing thrill hammer, your thing. Go ahead.
You mean my wang?
We're gonna do an impression of Nick Cage saying, "You mean my wang?" Like 8 times in this episode, probably. I rewound that and watched it like 5 times because I laughed so hard and I was like, will this be funnier if I just watch it again and again and again? It was.
There were multiple times during this movie where I was having to remind myself, this was directed by Francis Ford COPPOLA.
Yes, director of The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, like one of the most, The Godfather Part 2, in fact. One of the most acclaimed directors in modern film history, I think. And he also made this movie in which Nick Cage says, "You mean my wang?" We'll get into it, but I definitely think that there's like some artistry on display here as well. It's not like Francis Ford Coppola made this. It's more like Francis Ford Coppola made this.
Yes, that's exactly the tone. This is such a departure from what I expect. Of a Francis Ford Coppola film.
Right. It's not that the movie's bad and he's a good director who made a bad movie. It's that the movie is very not what the other movies that he is known for are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing...
I don't know why it said it like that.
I don't know either, but I'm going to answer regardless. I'm doing okay. I told you before we started recording, I woke up in the middle of the night last night having an insane coughing fit. And there's been some wildfire smoke in the area, and that's what Countess Pod, which is, by the way, High Priestess Pod's new name, that she has mandated.
She did inform us in the group chat.
Yeah, she mandated that we use it on mic. Countess Pod thinks that it was due to the fire smoke, and I was like, well, I've never reacted that way to wildfire smoke before. I've been around wildfires my whole life. And she was like, well, you're 31 now. And I was like, yeah, it might just be my lungs are old and shitty. But it was bad. I woke up at 1 a.m. and I couldn't breathe. And I thought the podmaster was going to have to drive me to the hospital. And then I took some Mucinex and it worked and I went back to bed. But it was a scary and weird experience. And then other than that, in general, I'm doing okay. I came to the realization this week that I think I am committed to doing more things in my life than I literally am physically capable of doing with the amount of time that is in a day.
Yeah, I feel like that happens every few months or so with you.
Yeah, and so trying to figure that out, and trying to figure out what's most important and what's less important and what I have to do and what I maybe don't have to do. But yeah, it's a period of extreme busyness, and I'm just trying to think about how do I prioritize and make sure that I have enough time to do everything, even though I think I literally don't have enough time to do everything. So really the thing is more, what am I not going to do or put off till later or whatever. Anyway, how are you doing?
Justus.
Yeah.
Maria Christina Burkett Jr.
Yeah.
I'm going to echo something that you've said recently on the show. Feel like I'm losing my mind.
Yes.
Don't know what's going on. Don't know what's going on up there. The chemicals are just maybe very off balance in my brain. I got a new dart gun, like a toy dart gun with these very, very tiny plastic darts. And so I was shooting it off in my house for the first time to see what it was like and lost a couple of them. and then spent the next 45 minutes tearing my house apart trying to look for them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's wrong with me?
Yes.
The way I rationalized it was like, well, they're tiny and I don't want the cats to swallow them by accident. And I've just kind of come to the conclusion that if I can't find them, then the cats can't either. And if they do find them, they will most likely not eat them based on their past behavior with finding small things on the floor of the house.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll just find an excuse to clean my house in the next couple of days and maybe I'll come across them.
Yeah.
But shit like that, where I'm just like,
where you
I
just
can't.
like have a manic episode.
Right.
Where you're like, I must do this thing and nothing else matters, even though it's actually totally unimportant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to trim my beard, and eventually it just got to the point where I was trimming it so meticulously and trying to keep it so even that I realized I should just shave the whole fucking thing off.
This has happened to me so many times, so I can commiserate, my man. Like, anytime I start fucking with my beard, it usually ends up in me shaving the entire thing off. And I'm like, I just need to not touch it. If I want it to get longer, I need to just not fuck with it. Like, other than combing it, I just have to leave it alone. And eventually, if I want to trim, if it's like getting a little scraggly, I need to go to a professional. Like, I need to like schedule a beard cutting appointment, because that shit happens to me all the time.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now, and my face looks like a testicle. And I was just finding excuses to get up and get away from my computer where I work from home, and I couldn't sit still and couldn't focus for like more than 15 minutes at a time.
To be fair, I've never seen a testicle with your soulful brown eyes, by the way.
Thank you.
So I wouldn't say your face totally looks like a testicle.
Yeah. And then I was like, I should just go fucking shave my head off too. Shave all my hair off my head and
also my entire body.
My entire body. I need to be hairless and pure.
Then I'll be pure, yeah.
Yeah, so that's my week. Don't really have any media to recommend. Nothing I've been enjoying that I feel like sharing on the show.
Yeah, I have a couple things, which is just continuing my enjoyment of hardcore albums recently. Couple bands with names that I'm gonna feel real weird saying on mic. Couch Slut and Mannequin Pussy are two bands that have recently released albums, hardcore albums, and both of their new albums are the best output of their respective careers, I think. So if you want female-led hardcore that is unkind to your ears, check out Couch Slut and Mannequin Pussy's new albums. Good bands, good albums. Sorry, you're going insane.
Thank you.
Anyway, speaking of going insane,
that was part of it. Watching this movie was like, I feel like I'm losing my fucking mind watching this thing.
Yes. So this movie is unhinged.
Yeah, what the Justus, talk to me about this fucking thing.
Okay, so
we're doing Peggy Sue Got Married, directed by Francis Ford COPPOLA from
1986,
starring Nick Cage and Kathleen Turner.
And Jim Carrey is in it?
Jim Carrey shows up for a spell.
I forgot he was in this movie, and like the first time he shows up, he's like aged up. It's like him at the reunion, and I didn't clock him at first, because is he the one doing cocaine?
He's doing cocaine.
Yeah. That's the first time you see him. And it's like a shot from overhead, and you don't really get a very good look at his face. And I was like, is that fucking Jim Carrey? And I was like, is he in this movie? Because I fully forgot and didn't notice his name in the opening credits, because I maybe wasn't paying 1,000% attention to the opening credits. But then like there was a close-up of his face, and I was like, I forgot fucking Jim Carrey's in this movie as like he's not a lead of this movie. He's just like a bit player in this, which I'm like so not used to seeing him in that space, and it was like kind of delightful. But anyway, yeah, sorry, didn't mean to go on a fucking whole Jim Carrey tangent. But yeah, so like the reason that I suggested that we do this movie is basically my family rented this movie a couple times, and I remember watching it and how fucking weird it was, and I was like, that will probably be a movie that we can talk about on the podcast. That's all the thought that went into this one appearing on the show.
Okay, that's fair.
Because it was literally just one that we rented, I think when I was in like my early teens or something. Yeah, so this doesn't have like any kind of specific strong connection. It's just a thing that, like, yeah, after a couple of rentals, my mom and my brother and I would quote a few lines from this movie at each other, like maximum intensity and no more Jello for me, Mom. And it just kind of stuck in my memory because it's weird as hell.
Yeah, this is a weird first Francis Ford Coppola film for us to talk about.
Yep.
And a weird first Nick Cage film for us to talk about.
Yes. And a very strange first Jim Carrey film for us to talk
about. I guess Jim's here too.
Yes. Yeah, it's a weird one for both of them. Nicolas Cage, the Podmaster Countess Pod recently reminded me, is Francis Ford Coppola's nephew.
Yes.
I remembered that they were related, but like that it was a close enough relation that he's literally just his nephew.
Yeah, his birth name is Nicolas Coppola.
Yeah, that slipped from my memory. So yeah, it is funny that this is such an early Cage movie. He hadn't done a lot by 1986.
Yeah, this is before Raising Arizona.
Yeah.
And Moonstruck, which were both big movies for him in terms of like him as a star, as a lead.
Yeah.
And this was not his first time working with Francis Ford Coppola.
Right.
But I think this may have been the biggest role that he did with his good old uncle.
And Sofia Coppola also appears in this movie.
Yeah, I did not recognize her at all.
Because Francis Ford Coppola loves casting people who are blood relatives.
Yes,
to him.
yes, the king of nepotism in Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. Should we just get into the movie?
I guess so. The Francis Ford Coppola movies I have seen are his Godfather trilogy and Apocalypse Now. Basically his most acclaimed movies. I think I saw The Outsiders, his adaptation of The Outsiders in college.
Yeah.
Remember absolutely nothing about it. I have not explored any of the other films in his filmography. And it's interesting because the Godfather films and Apocalypse Now are kind of his most acclaimed and his most critically successful. He's a big proponent of the filmmaker as an auteur, right?
Yeah.
That kind of defines his whole career. But I find it interesting that, his contemporaries like Spielberg and Scorsese and even Lucas, he has, I think, less memorable or noteworthy films that have reached pop culture than they have, aside from The Godfathers and Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, but it's like, those will get you a long way.
Sure.
Because The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, like, those are movies that are frequently on many, many people's lists of the best movies ever made of all time. So it's like, if you fucking strike out 8 times, but then send a fucking fastball into outer space.
Yeah.
If you orbit a baseball, right? People are going to remember that.
Yeah, he has so many other passion projects that he, bled for that just didn't pan out. But he really strikes gold with those first 2 Godfather films for sure.
Yeah.
And Apocalypse Now, which of course, also he bled for and almost killed him.
Yeah.
And everyone on that fucking movie. So yeah, this was a wild pick for our first Francis Ford Coppola film. And yeah, let's just get into it.
Speaking, by the way, just really briefly before we get into it, of movies that he bled for that are wild, stay tuned for our eventual episode on Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, because that movie is also very crazy.
Yeah, I still need to see Dracula. It's sitting on my shelf. And he has another passion project that's been stuck in development hell for decades, coming out hopefully soon, that I guess is like independently funded from his wine business.
Yes. I've probably drank more Coppola wines than I have seen Coppola films.
He's got Megaopolis coming out.
Oh yeah.
Which I know precisely nothing about other than Adam Driver's in it. I don't think the plot's really been revealed yet, but hoping that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get into the movie.
Let's talk about Peggy Sue Got Married. We start with very colorful opening credits.
Yes.
Over a song about Peggy Sue.
It's a Buddy Holly song, I guess.
Yeah. I didn't notice, I didn't recognize it when I heard it. But it wasn't written for the movie. It's just a song about somebody named Peggy Sue.
Sure. I think Buddy Holly was dead at this point.
Yeah. That's a good point. He couldn't have written an original song for the movie from Beyond the Grave. Anyway, so and then the movie opens on Nick Cage doing a commercial for his electronics store as Crazy Charlie, and immediately it's just literally immediately off the rails.
Yeah, it hit me in the face like a baseball bat.
It's 1986 Cage, but he is already caging all over the place in this movie.
Yeah, he's
caging up and down.
He's like 22 when this
Yes.
comes out, which was important because in this movie it plays neither a convincing high school student or a convincing middle-aged man.
When they have him as in the middle-aged man makeup, he sort of looks undead. He kind of looks like he is a zombie, because their trick to making him look older is to just give him like really dark circles around his eyes and kind of like shitty stubble, so his face just kind of looks gray, and to just make him look tired.
And then like
haggard.
gray Halloween hairspray.
Yeah. So to me, he just sort of looked like a zombie in a Romero movie.
In this opening commercial, because again, I was like, I was completely stunned by what I was witnessing.
Yes.
Is he doing like a racist impersonation?
I don't know what he's doing
to sell these appliances.
I don't know what he's doing. It wouldn't surprise me if it was, but it's so non-specific that it's hard to nail down if it's racist or if he's just doing a weird, wacky voice. It's hard to describe what he's doing in the Crazy Charlie commercial.
Because he's doing wacky voices throughout this movie. But I think at first
Boy,
I
is
was
he
like,
ever.
is he doing an Asian thing? And then we got more into his character later in the film, like, oh, he's still doing weird voices.
Yes. Yeah. There is not. And we, I guess since we're already talking about Cage, because the movie just opens on Cage.
Yeah, it just smacks you in the face with Cage.
We can just talk about Cage. Because, so, there is not a single line delivery of his in this movie where I'm like, oh, any other actor in the entire world would have also said it that way. It's like, no, literally these are Cage line deliveries and only Cage line deliveries. And that being said, I think he's good in this movie. Am I crazy? Because I'm a Cage fan.
Yeah.
We're both
yeah.
Cage fans. We like Cage.
I think if it were not for his litany of direct-to-video action films where he clearly doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And a few missteps here and there, I think he's a candidate for like our best living actor.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think he's totally amazing when he cares about the project and about the material. And even when he doesn't care about the project and the material, he still commits 100%, but that doesn't necessarily result in a good performance.
Yeah.
He never doesn't commit. It's just like he can elevate good material, and then with bad material, he kind of meets it where it's at, in my opinion. And I don't think this script is bad material, and I think he's doing a very weird performance in this movie, but it kind of worked for me. In like, there were so many times where he was delivering lines of dialogue, and I was paying more attention to what the character was saying and how he was feeling and how it was making Peggy Sue feel and all that, because I was so drawn into the moment by just like, why the fuck is he speaking like this? And so I'm like, it's almost like a 4-dimensional chess performance where he's like hooking me with like the weird, oh, Peggy Sue,
yeah.
And I'm like, well, now I'm paying closer attention to everything that's coming out of his mouth, because why the fuck does he sound that way? I don't know. I kind of thought it was good.
I was never not bored by it.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Never bored by it.
It's good, and Nick Cage performances are sometimes hard to square with each other.
Yeah.
Because what makes an entertaining Nick Cage performance doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. This is a melodramatic movie in a lot of ways.
Yes.
This is a a magical realism film.
Yes.
And
It's to some extent kind of a satire of 80s culture, but also 60s culture as well. So like there's all that.
yeah. And Cage and many of the other actors in this movie have to do the difficult job of being aged up and aged down.
Yeah.
And some of that is assisted by makeup. Cage also decided to do that with his performance.
Yeah.
And really, 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 really commit to it. I mean, you can't say he didn't commit to this thing that he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's entertaining as hell. I don't know if it works for the script.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I do see where you're coming from, because especially towards the end, there's a couple of scenes that are just two-handers between him and Kathleen Turner. And I was like, oh, she's kind of in a different movie than he is. Like, they're sort of not in the same
I think so.
movie.
I think you're right.
Which is maybe a little bit of a problem.
I think all of the flaws in this script, and I think there are many, I think Kathleen Turner is really putting this movie on her back.
Yeah.
I don't think this movie works without Kathleen Turner.
I completely agree.
And Coppola behind the camera.
Yeah.
But Kathleen Turner's by far the standout in this film. And I think if Cage wasn't playing Charlie, I think if it was Jim Carrey playing Charlie and doing that voice and doing that thing, I think I might be able to rationalize a little bit more. I think it might come across as more realistic.
Just because Jim Carrey's just like that.
Jim Carrey's like that. He looks younger in this movie.
He does, yeah. He looks like a little baby in this movie.
A little baby Jim Carrey, yeah. Cage still kind of looks older than he is.
It's so funny because he was 22,
right?
Like you said, when this movie filmed. But yeah, if you told me this man was 38 years old, I'd be like, yeah, okay. He's just got one of those faces. I don't know. He does look very youthful at times in this movie, especially when he's doing the doo-wop singing. There were some shots of him during that where I was like, oh, little baby Nick Cage. But then some of the time I'm like, what is this eagle-faced hawk of a man? He's given Bird hard in this movie. I think it's his big swoopy hair and his like long kind of nose, and how he's always, because he's talking like a dork, so he keeps tucking his chin backwards, which accentuates his nose. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he took this role on the condition that he could play it over the top, and this led to conflicts on set between him and Kathleen Turner. I guess he was very hard to work with on this.
Yeah,
and I think Kathleen Turner went to Francis Ford Coppola and she's like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, direct him."
Yeah, don't worry about Nick. He's my nephew.
And it's weird because it seems like Nick is warming up for Vampire's Kiss.
Yes.
Which we will be talking about for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think this was the movie to do that on.
Probably not.
I don't understand how he gets the script for Peggy Sue Got Married and decides this is the one where I'm going to go and do my full like insane nouveau shamanistic German expressionistic acting style. That's where I'm going to debut it. I don't know. Maybe he's done it in other movies.
Maybe it was the scene in this movie where a group of wizards tries to send someone's granddaughter into the past, which we'll get to, but maybe that's what he connected to in the material and was like, this movie's weird as hell. Anyway, so he's on a TV commercial.
He's on a TV commercial.
Yeah.
His ex-wife or they're getting divorced.
They're getting divorced.
They're getting divorced.
In the middle of getting divorced.
Yeah, our titular Peggy Sue, played gloriously by Kathleen Turner.
She's so good in this
She's so
movie.
fucking good in this.
She's very funny, and at the moments where the movie needs it to be dramatic and have her performance have a little bit more weight and pathos behind it, she delivers that like really, really immaculately.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
She's getting ready with her daughter for her high school reunion and puts on this insane silver late 50s, early 60s dress.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's sort of a poodle skirt. It doesn't have the actual poodle on it, but it's also like shiny. It's batshit insane.
Yeah.
And her she has her daughter here with her daughter Beth. Just a very endearing and nice mother-daughter relationship in this movie.
Agree.
It doesn't, because spoiler alert, she goes back in time and is in 1960 for most of the movie, so the daughter isn't a huge part of the film. But anytime Kathleen Turner and this actress who is playing the daughter Who was that?
I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Apologies to the actress playing the daughter. It does matter. You did very good in this movie. I just don't know your name off the top of my head. But yeah, anytime that they had their little interplay, I was like, this is very charming and sweet. I really like this mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
You can tell that her daughter is kind of struggling with the divorce and still loves her dad and
loves both of her parents a lot. Clearly.
Yeah. And Peggy Sue's getting ready for her high school reunion.
25th reunion, which
is
if I ever go to my 25th reunion and you hear about me doing that, David, shoot me in the head because I have been taken over by some kind of alien body snatcher.
Yeah.
I would never fucking go to a high school reunion in a million years.
My circle of hell would be an eternal high school reunion.
Yeah. I already my 10th one. No, not 10th, because that's going to be next year. No, never mind. Sorry, I was thinking when I graduated college.
Yep.
I don't know how old I am. My 10th one was a few years ago, and there was a Facebook invite that went around, and a couple people reached out to me, messaged me on Instagram being like, you going to the reunion? And I was like, fuck no. I would rather lick a public toilet seat.
Mine was in 2021, and I don't know if at the time when it was scheduled or whatever, COVID was still rearing its ugly head, and people weren't really sure about going, and so maybe it was canceled. But I still live in the same town where I graduated high school from, so I would not go there. For any reason. So yes, Peggy Sue shows up to her high school reunion with her daughter in tow, and we get a scene here of introduced to the various characters that we're going to spend the rest of the movie with, including Jim Carrey doing cocaine in the a bathroom or something at a high school reunion, which I'm assuming is just what happened at every high school reunion in the 80s.
Yes, this is just par for the course for 1986.
Yeah.
Here we are also introduced to, so there's a few key people who we're going to see in the past who were introduced to, Peggy's two friends, and Jim Carrey. We also meet here Richard Norvik, who is some fucking tech big shot.
Yeah.
He has a microchip business. He's got millions of dollars. He's a fucking big dick swinging entrepreneur, self-made man. And everybody's being really nice to him. And it's clear that he was the nerd of the class. But now that he's successful and stuff, everybody is turned around on Richard and is oh, we love Richard.
And he's clearly just still stuffy and hates people. And kind of a stick in the mud.
Yeah, it's very funny. It happens for 2 seconds in this scene. It's not dwelled on at all. But people keep going up to Richard, and mostly they're being really nice to him. But at one point during this reunion, a guy goes up to him who's just fucking shit-faced, and goes up to Richard and is you got rich and I'm a failure, you fucking asshole. And just telling him off, which I just like that there's that moment for 1 second where it's oh, you fucked me over on a business deal, you little twerp. Whatever that guy's deal is, I like that he's giving it to Richard here. Because I kind of think Richard's a worm. The movie sort of wants you to like him, and I'm I kind of don't.
Yeah. And actually, I think this actor, whose name I didn't look up either, I think he reads really well both as an adult and as a high school student. In terms of the makeup and his performance and stuff like that, he's one that really works in this movie for me.
Yes, his name is Barry Miller.
Barry Miller. Yeah. And good performance in this flick. One of my standout performances in this movie.
Oh, he's in The Last Temptation of Christ.
Oh.
I don't know who he played. Oh, he's Jeroboam. I don't remember that guy from the Bible, but I assume Martin Scorsese knows better than me.
Hell of a name.
I might have mispronounced it. Anyway, Peggy Sue she's kind of linked up with her old high school friend group. Mm-hmm. They're talking about, the boys they used to be into. There's this guy, Michael Fitzsimmons, who Peggy Sue used to be kind of into in high school, but then she ended up marrying Charlie and never did anything with him.
Yeah, and she's letting on to people that she and Charlie are getting divorced.
Yeah,
she's also nervous about him being there, but
Yeah.
she doesn't think he's going to show up.
Yeah, some people seem to know the situation with Peggy Sue and Charlie already, and some people don't. It kind of just depends on like how close she is with him. But then Charlie does eventually show up, and man. So in addition to Cage caging up and down this movie, Cage is also duding so hard in this movie. Cage is like duding up and down this movie. When he walks into this reunion in his fucking like white suit and like white pants and Hawaiian shirt. And is just kind of looking around like, oh, okay, yeah. I was like, has a dude ever duded harder? So he shows up and is like swarmed with guys who are like, oh, I love your TV commercials and shit. And Peggy Sue starts getting really uncomfortable that her ex is here.
She's also dancing with Richard.
Oh, yeah. She is dancing with Richard.
And we're getting an implication that she might be into him.
Yeah. We get the implication that even if she's not into Richard specifically, she's like open to playing the field.
Yes.
Now that she is being separated.
She plays the field hard in this movie.
We should say, I don't know if we mentioned it specifically, but the reason they're getting divorced is because Charlie cheated on her and left her for another woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's also kind of out for revenge a little bit, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I guess Charlie and Peggy Sue were like the homecoming king and queen.
Yeah, like one of the popular couples in school.
They have photos up, and the committee for this reunion decided to award king and queen awards for this reunion, and Richard's name gets called, and Peggy's name gets called. And as Peggy gets up to accept the award, and she's like very emotional and doesn't really know how to feel about this. And
yeah,
is
she
like,
kind of doesn't want to do it because she's like uncomfortable, and Charlie's there, and it's weird.
Yeah, and she's in this dress that she feels uncomfortable with, that people keep commenting on.
Yeah, because she's like the only one who dressed like it was 1960.
Yeah,
and everybody else is dressed like in the regular 80s clothes. So she's like very self-conscious, very nervous. She kind of has like a panic attack here.
Yeah, she does.
Which and it is sort of. I like that it's kind of creepy and unsettling and disorienting the way it's shot. Like there's the flashing light and like the sound kind of cuts out, and there's like all these like flash close-ups of the cake being wheeled toward her. Mm-hmm. And it's like almost kind of horror-y in this moment where she's having a panic attack, and I really appreciated how it was shot.
It's from her perspective, and this movie's aesthetic throughout it is very dreamlike. Yeah. And I think this is really where it's introduced here. And I think it's done very well. And I think this movie's gorgeous. Yeah. Partially because you have Coppola behind the camera, but also because you have Jordan Cronenweth as cinematographer, who worked on movies like Blade Runner, so obviously this thing's gonna look fucking amazing. Yeah.
Great use of color in this movie, great composition a lot of the time. Like a lot of the wide shots, whether they're establishing or the like later, there's like the scene with Michael Fitzsimmons and Peggy Sue, where they like drive his motorcycle out into, the country or whatever. Just a lot of those wide shots. I was just like, man, I could look at this for like an hour, because it's just so well put together. So yeah.
Great use of lighting too. There's a lot of scenes with light streaming in through a window to light a scene, and it all looks pretty amazing. Yeah. So Peggy Sue faints.
Yep, she passes out. And she wakes up at a blood drive in 1960 in high school.
And Nick Cage is standing over her, clearly working on his vampire's kiss.
I want to suck your blood. Is literally the first, like, other than the TV commercial, pretty much the first thing he says in this movie is like, I want to suck your blood. It is insane. And then
all you have to do is just put the files in alphabetical order.
A, B, C, D. We're not going to do the whole thing.
Yeah. This isn't a Vampire's Kiss episode.
Yeah.
Well, this is also the period of his career where Cage has to do a voice.
Yes.
And that voice is kind of like this.
Yeah.
And in some movies, it's a little bit more like that.
Yeah.
And in this one, he's just,
Peggy, Peggy.
Yeah.
He sounds like a fucking dork ass nerd in this movie, and I also kind of like that he's like one of the popular guys in school and he sounds like this. He's like, he's like on a sports team, I think, and he's like part of like a musical group.
He's
that,
got
like,
a
all the
nice
girls are
car.
going. Yeah, he's got a nice car,
And at the same time, he's like, "Oh, Peggy Sue, I thought we were gonna get married right after graduation."
Anyway, so he is like,
"Oh, Peggy Sue, give me that Twinkie. Let's go get to class or whatever."
and she's like, wait, what the fuck is going on? Charlie looks like he's 18 years old. What the fuck? And so she's like just given blood at a blood drive at school. And she like goes into the bathroom and like immediately she is the person who has time traveled in film history who has the least chill about it. Or maybe the most chill about it, but in like a weird way. Because normally when someone time travels in a movie, they sort of understand that they've time traveled and try and kind of blend in. And immediately she's like, I'm fucking from 1986. I'm 43 years old. The fuck are you people talking about? Like, she's in the bathroom with her high school friends who are clearly now 18 years old. And she's like, what did you do with your hair? What is happening? And I'm like, you went to 1960. There was a big banner on the wall that said 1960.
Yeah, to make it very clear to you and the audience.
Yes.
And then her friends drive her home, and they drive through town, set to Tequila.
Yes.
Which I guess must be the music that plays when you go back in time and don't know what's going on, because it fits very well.
It does fit very well.
It sounds like the music that's been playing in my head for the past week as I've been losing my mind.
It's a good...
Dun, 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 dun,
You're just on your hands and knees looking for tiny plastic
just
darts.
That over and over.
Tequila. Yeah, that was stuck in the Podmaster's head today, and she was like, why is that stuck in my head? And I'm like, well, I was watching Peggy Sue Got Married while you were asleep last night. Maybe it entered your brain subconsciously in your dreams and got stuck in your head. It's just that catchy. So she goes home, and she's just like marveling at like her childhood home being the way it was in 1960.
She's so happy to see her mom.
Yes, her sister. There's a really sweet moment.
Great. This was when I was like, oh, Kathleen Turner's fucking awesome in this. And I don't know that I've seen her in a ton or could really place her in a lineup. The scene where her sister walks in, played by Sofia Coppola. Kathleen Turner gives a great performance.
Yeah.
And it really sells the moment. And I will also say the music in this movie is fantastic too.
Yeah.
And I think when the script doesn't necessarily work at selling the melodrama, selling the emotions, the music does a good job helping you at least feel something while watching this.
Yes, I agree. And she's like you said, putting this movie on her back. A movie that would not necessarily be bad with a different actress in this role, but would not be as good as it is. I think like not having her here would handicap this thing quite a bit. Because she's really doing a lot of heavy lifting here. And I love the scene with her and her sister. It's so sweet, where she's just like, hey, like, let's play a game, right? Do you want to play? Which is a thing that like every younger sibling wants to hear an older sibling say. Is like, hey, like, do you want to play a game with me? You know? And so it's just very sweet and very nice. And then they're watching TV. And I love Peggy Sue getting up and going into her dad's office, and there's like a bottle of like brandy or something that she just pours for herself and takes a swig of, because she's 18 in the past, but this is a 43-year-old woman's brain,
right? And
she's having to deal with the fact that she has time traveled, and I like that she keeps saying that she thinks she's dead, which that's probably where I would go if I was in this situation. I wouldn't be like, oh, I time traveled. I'd be like, I'm dead. This is purgatory, maybe, is being a high school senior for all time.
I think I might treat it like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
I think I might, not that I'm going to start running around killing people, but I'm just going to
go into a convenience store and grab things and leave.
I'm just going to cause chaos.
Yeah.
I'm just going to act like I have respawns available.
Because if you don't, I guess you die as a time traveler, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And if you do have respawns, fuck yeah.
Take a shit in a mall or something.
Jerk
off on a police car.
Jerk off on a police car.
I don't know where I got that from.
Yeah. But what she decides to do is raid her dad's liquor stash, which is and I love her pouring the one glass and drinking it, and then her being like, screw it, I'm probably dead anyway. And she just pours herself like a huge, like fucking 4 fingers of this brandy or whatever, and just downs it. So then she's fucked up.
Yeah, and then her parents come home, or her dad comes home, and they're confused about why she's drunk.
Yeah, her dad bought a new car, and she starts laughing about the car, and because she remembers this car clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Young lady, are you drunk?" And she's like, "Yeah." I love her walking into his office and
get another
drink as he's yelling at her, because she's 43 years old. She doesn't give a shit if she's getting yelled at.
And then she storms off, and she's like, whatever. She's like, fuck you. I'm going to go to Liverpool and discover the Beatles.
Which, by the way, there's a little bit of stuff in this movie about her like trying to make use of her future knowledge in the past. I'm gonna go to Liverpool and discover the Beatles is a throwaway joke about it, but then later she does some stuff with Richard where she's like giving him advice on like how to make money in the future. A thing that I am surprised they didn't bring up in this movie, and I really wish they would have, is the JFK assassination was only 3 years after the 1960 portion of this film.
So you want 11/22/63?
Yeah, I think so.
But starring Kathleen Turner's Peggy Sue.
Yeah, and maybe like she gets Nick Cage along for the ride. He's got a car. She needs him to drive to Dallas.
Yeah, that would whip ass. I'm not gonna lie. I'd watch the fuck out of that movie.
I just kept being like, when are they gonna reference it? Guess they never will. Because he was president already, I think.
I think they maybe.
I think his term started in. No, he was sworn in 61, I guess. So the election would have been in 60.
Okay.
I think. I don't know. I don't fucking know.
They may have name dropped him at some point in this movie. I can't remember.
Yeah, maybe. But I was looking out for it, and I was like, any Kennedy assassination jokes? No, I guess 1986 was still too soon. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway. So she like goes up to bed. There's kind of like some sweet stuff with her mom. Basically being like, don't, try not to grow up too fast. And Peggy Sue is kind of just like, what the fuck? Like, but then she wakes up the next morning and she's just like fully committed to being in the past now. She's like, this is great. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to see my friends. I'm going to hang out. It's going to be rad. And maybe I'm dead, but I'm making the most of it is kind of her attitude. And she like wants her whole family to like have like a breakfast together as a family. And she's like, isn't this so nice? And her parents are like, what the fuck?
I like that they don't bother to age her down. Obviously, like the clothes that she's wearing are the clothes that she would have worn as a teenager, but it's still very clearly like adult Kathleen Turner.
Yes, it's a grown woman.
Yeah, we're still seeing her from that way.
But also, like in 80s movies, high school students were played by adult actors a lot.
Yeah.
So the optics of it almost completely work because this is a movie from 1986 where I'm like, no, yeah, I'm used to seeing someone who looks 30 years old be a high school student. Like there's no cognitive dissonance there at all because like that's what movies who aren't satirizing this do.
I feel like there's more. I have more of an issue with actors like Nick Cage and some of her friends in this movie playing high schoolers when they very clearly look like 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's just something about it, and I don't know why. It's very obvious in this, and it really takes me out of it, especially with seeing them in the old age makeup and stuff in the beginning.
The old age makeup stuff is a little rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with Cage, because the fake teeth ain't doing him any favors.
Yeah.
That hair ain't doing him any favors.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, he has to do this voice, and
it just doesn't compute.
I like that he tones it down a little bit when he's old, though, because when he's a kid, he's like,
oh, gee willikers.
Yeah.
And then when he's 43, he's like,
oh, Peggy Sue, I really want to just see if we can work this out. I'm middle-aged, and I have to pay taxes now, and child support.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Nick Cage picks her up, and they drive to school, and they're talking about breaking up.
Yes, because apparently, so Peggy Sue has been dropped into a point in her past where apparently, like the day before, Charlie, Nick Cage's character, floated to her that he wanted an open relationship. I guess is the thing, where he was basically like, well, we should see some other people and then we'll settle down. And apparently she had gotten mad at him about that, but she doesn't remember any of this.
Yeah.
So she's like, refresh my memory. Like, what was the argument about? But it's very funny that then like the issue in the future is that he has cheated on her. Because it's like, well, the signs were there, you know?
And she's like, we should just break up now.
Yeah.
She's really like driving the knife into him this whole movie.
I'm
surprised that he sticks around.
One of the things I love about this movie is I love that Peggy Sue is having a argument with 18-year-old Charlie that is based on her like 20 years of marriage with Charlie, or it wouldn't be quite 20, her like 15 years of marriage with Charlie. So it's very funny that she's like fighting his younger self who knows none of that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And like later on when she like mentions Janet to him and it gets like very specific, it's just so funny that it's like she's just using his 18-year-old self as a punching bag. To just like get it all out. It's very I like all of that shit a lot.
Yeah. There's lots of school stuff here in various classes. We see Jim Carrey pop up.
Yeah.
They go to lunch. I just wanted to focus in on Nick Cage's lunch. It is a hot dog, a pie, and 2 cookies.
Fuck yeah.
What the fuck were they feeding these kids back in the 60s? I want to go.
Yeah.
Take me there.
It's fine. Everyone was on prescription amphetamines, so they all stayed thin. You can eat a hot dog and a pie and 2 cookies.
Yeah, we also meet
taking speedballs all day
long. We also meet Richard.
Yeah.
And we get a little introduction to Michael.
Yes. Michael Fitzsimmons, who looks like a murderer.
I thought he was Clint Howard at first.
Yeah.
Ron Howard's brother, Clint Howard. I looked at him, I'm like, that's a weird fucking looking kid.
Yeah.
But he kind of looks like Clint Howard. Was Clint Howard ever sort of hot? Totally different.
He's sort of hot, but he also kind of looks like a monster.
He kind of is a monster.
Yeah, he kind of is.
At one point he floats the idea to her of like driving, like getting on the motorbike, driving off into the sunset and starting a polygamy colony together. This kid's gonna grow up to become Charlie Manson.
Yeah, it's only 9 years away.
That would be another good one too.
Yeah, she could stop the Manson murders.
Peggy Sue stops the Manson murders.
Well, she should also, while we're stopping the Manson murders, let's go to the same address and stop Polanski from doing some stuff too. Be like, well, maybe if his wife never gotten murdered, maybe he wouldn't have been a sexual predator.
That's something Tarantino should have done in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah. Also, just stop Roman Polanski.
Also, just kill Roman Polanski. Just cave his head in with a baseball bat.
Yeah, he's like, while I'm doing revisionist history, we're gonna make sure that like the Tate LaBianca murders and all that stuff doesn't happen, and also I'm gonna destroy Roman Polanski's nutsack with a crowbar.
I'm sure he probably signed that petition to get.
Probably
Polanski.
He's probably a huge Polanski fan. To be fair, I'm a huge Polanski fan of movies that he has made and nothing else.
And I think that's the justification that a lot of those people who sign that petition have.
That's true, but I would never sign a petition being like, let him make movies. Let him come back to America. It's like, no, he should be in exile or in prison. And also, he has made some of my favorite movies that I have ever seen.
Sure. But we could do a whole series. Peggy Sue got married. Peggy Sue stops the JFK assassination.
Peggy Sue stops the Manson murders.
It's like fucking the Magic Treehouse books.
Yeah. There you go. Just her doing shit through time, stopping crimes.
Peggy Sue wins Vietnam.
Peggy Sue helps John Hinckley Jr. Aim more accurately.
And gives him a weapon more powerful than a 22.
Although she came from 86. When was Reagan shot?
I don't know.
I don't know if it was before or after. I assume it was before 86, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
John, this is a 357 Magnum. Good luck, buddy.
Parody satire. I mean, he's already dead. Who gives a shit? Anyway. I forgot where we were because I started talking about Peggy Sue killing Ronald Reagan. Anyway, so yeah, there's school stuff here. I like the bit with where there's a math test that she hasn't studied for, and she like doesn't do it, and the teacher's like, she's just doodles all over her test, and the teacher's like, Peggy Sue, what is the meaning of this? And she's like, I happen to know from experience. I will never need to know this shit. And all the students in class are like, yeah, Peggy Sue, you tell them. It's very funny. There's also a very funny bit at the beginning of the school day where they're all doing their patriotic indoctrination that we make children do in this country.
They're singing My Country 'Tis of Thee.
Yes, with
Which
their hands
is-
over their hearts. And I love that she's just doing it very enthusiastically. She's like really emphatically singing, and all the other high schoolers are like, this fucking sucks. I hate that I'm here. It's just very funny because she's like totally like into reliving her youth and is like, this is great. And they're all like, this fucking sucks. It's very funny.
She goes to talk to Richard and tries to convince him that
I'm from the future.
I'm from the future. I'm a cybernetic organism, living tissue of a metal endoskeleton.
And my husband left me for a bitch named Janet. I swear to God, if I ever see Janet.
Is this the home of Charlie? He's been targeted for termination. I like that he describes time travel as a burrito. That's one of the
Richard's burrito.
That's one of the more interesting time travel metaphors that I've seen in film.
And also, there's some beautiful poetry. There's some beautiful words in this screenplay. The screenplay, I didn't.
You mean like, you mean my wang?
Yes, but aside from that, when Richard's describing Richard's burrito, and he's basically saying that he thinks like time can fold in on itself and moments can meet, sort of, is what he's saying. And the physics of it aren't important because the movie is magical realism and they're not actually interested in exploring the time travel device.
We're not folding a piece of paper in half and firing a pencil through it.
No, that's in the greatest movie ever made, Event Horizon.
And on Interstellar. Which I wonder if Chris Nolan watched Event Horizon and was like,
what if I did that, but without Hellraiser elements? But yeah, so he's describing Richard's burrito, and I just like the line where he's like, time is the tortilla of the burrito, and she's like, well, what's inside? And he's like, oh, it could be anything. It could be, it could be thoughts, memories, feelings, complex equations, anything. And just the tone that takes, where it's basically like, yeah, like the time that we exist in is like full of all this like amorphous stuff, and that's like what makes us human, is like kind of a thing that this movie is talking about a little bit. And like in the scene with the grandparents later on, it also feels like we're touching on that again, where it's like the days that you live and the years that you live and time itself is kind of like weird and squishy, and like what actually makes us is like our memories and experiences and like what matters to us. And so I like some of that stuff in this script, and it shows up a little bit in this scene.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a nice scene with them. I think it endears me a little bit more towards Richard.
Initially, and then he starts getting worse.
Sure.
Yeah.
But especially because we don't have a great impression of him at the beginning.
Yeah. I do think the thing where it's like he's a tech billionaire probably played different in 1986 than it does now.
Yeah.
Right? Him at the reunion, it was like, oh, he made all his money off of microchips. Immediately, I'm like, fuck this guy. He's the worst person in the universe.
Absolutely.
I don't think an audience in 1986 necessarily would have had that knee-jerk reaction.
It's also funny to me that he's so convinced of her being a time traveler.
Yes,
he just buys it.
It's very funny because he asks for proof, and she's like, here's a bunch of things that haven't happened yet. And he's like, well, how could you possibly know that unless you were from the future? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe she made it up. Like, you have no way to cross-check. You'll have to wait several years to prove all of these things that she has just told you. But it's apparently good enough for him. And then he makes her stand in front of a fire truck.
Yeah, she's
like, maybe I'm dead.
Maybe I'm, yeah, right? So I'll stand in front of a fire truck and try to kill myself.
Yeah, he's basically like, well, there's one way to find out.
The next big thing that happens here is Charlie and Peggy go to a house party.
Yes. And Charlie's doo-wop group
with Jim Carrey,
performs, and Cage got pipes.
It sounds like him.
I think it's him.
Yeah.
I think he's singing, and Cage got pipes.
Yeah.
The singing is good.
This was one of the scenes in the movie where I felt like I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
Because
I don't know why.
Because it's Nicolas Cage and Jim Carrey in a doo-wop quartet.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And it sounds good, and you like it. Like, that's what's weird.
And
I
it's
think.
clearly doing something for Peggy Sue.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
she's getting horned up.
Yeah.
watching Nick Cage be like, doo-wop, she-doo-wop. Yeah. And so like they perform, all the girls, it's very funny. They're doing like you see like the videos of like Beatlemania where the women are just like screaming and holding their heads.
Or because they start gyrating like Elvis, you know, swinging their hips and stuff.
And so like these women are like clutching themselves and like falling over. About Nick Cage kind of like swaying his hips back and forth a little bit. Man. It's very funny.
Just wait until kink.com comes out. You guys are going to have your minds blown.
If someone from 1960 saw some of the shit that's on the internet now, they would just die immediately. Their heart would explode.
After they finish their performance, Charlie comes up to Peggy Sue and they start dancing and starts talking about how, like, you know the first dances were fertility rites, like trying to get her horny.
Yeah.
Insane. Another insane moment in this movie.
But
and
also it works. It works.
It works.
She does it. She's already horny and she gets hornier. And then so after they have their little dance and she's kind of like re-falling for the senior year of high school version of her ex-husband, then they're making out in the car. And I mean, this is the scene.
This is the scene. This is the line.
They're making out in the car, and I'm just gonna read this exchange.
Thank you for writing this down.
I'm gonna read this exchange verbatim. So they're making out in the car, and Peggy Sue says, "Let's make love," and he says,
"What? You mean sex? Intercourse? You want to have intercourse?"
And then. And so he's
fucking Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory.
He's a little like reticent, right? And apparently it's a thing where like he tried last week and she said no, so now he's confused. Which I mean, been there, buddy. That's part of the experience of dating in high school. But so then she's trying to convince him, and so she says, "Come on, doesn't Lucky Chucky want to come out?" And he goes,
"Who?"
And she says, "You know, your love machine. Your throbbing thrill hammer, your thing." And he goes,
You mean my wang?
Is that going to be the quote that you put at the top of the episode?
I don't know. There's actually a decent amount of good quotes in this movie. There's a lot of good lines, but I don't know if you can top
You mean my wang?
And like I said, I rewound it 5 times and I laughed my fucking ass off.
Yeah, this is where I'm like, this is Nicolas Cage in a film directed by Francis Ford Coppola. I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You mean my wang?
It's one of the greats. It's up there. It's in the Hall of Fame of the greatest movie quotes of all time.
Now I'm just thinking of like Pacino or Brando in the role.
You mean my way?
You mean my wang?
That's my Brando, I guess.
You mean my wang? It's very funny. Also,
because he's got a great wang.
Also, we should not ignore the fact that before he delivers the line, "You mean my wang," his face is fucking hysterical because she's like feeling around on his crotch and he's like reacting to it like a high school boy where he's like, oh. and his face, he's showing her his O face. Oh. He's like, he looks like his soul is being sucked out of him by a Dementor.
I mean, if Kathleen Turner was playing around with my junk. you know?
Yeah. So this scene basically ends with him being like,
I'm really confused. Last week you didn't want to touch my wiener, and now you want to touch my wiener, so I'm just going to take you home. I have to think about some stuff.
and so she is a horny 43-year-old woman in a 18-year-old's body who has just been turned down by Charlie. She's got to go find somebody who's going to scratch that itch. And we've already gotten the idea that maybe Michael Fitzsimmons is the man for the job. So she goes and finds him at like a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I fucking hate Michael Fitzsimmons.
Yeah, this guy fucking sucks.
Let me get that out there. I know we
Yeah.
talked about him already. He's totally like a pseudo-intellectual,
Yep.
beatnik, loves Kerouac, hates Hemingway,
Yeah.
quotes poetry all the time.
Writes his own poetry.
Writes his own
which
poetry.
We'll get into a little bit.
I like when... Yeah. I see a little bit of myself in this guy, and that's part of why I hate him.
Yes, same.
Also, I would never be this fucking edgy.
Yeah.
He's Christian Slater in Heathers.
Yeah.
Like JD's the psychopath version of him.
Yeah.
And
And Jess from Gilmore Girls, for the listeners who are aware of Gilmore Girls, Jess from Gilmore Girls is like the version of him that like has some redeeming qualities and can be fixed. Michael Fitzsimmons is right in the middle between JD from Heathers and Jess from Gilmore Girls, where it's like he's not gonna fucking blow up the school and try to kill you, but also you can't fix this guy. He is too far up his own ass.
this has been Justus's Gilmore Girls Corner.
That's right.
Yeah, Michael Fitzsimmons. I'm gonna he's going to get on that motorbike, ride out into the desert, attract a bunch of young women, and start some sort of cult.
He's going to start a sex cult, and it's presumably going to end with a government shootout. It's going to be Waco. Yeah. So, but like, so they're chatting.
Peggy
at the coffee
Sue
shop.
joins the ATF.
Oh, so she's now trying to kill Michael Fitzsimmons. Like,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
He's on the other end of the barrel. Anyway, so they're like chatting at the coffee shop. They kind of hit it off. Peggy Sue is trying to impress him because she just wants to get laid. Eventually they like take a little ride on his motorcycle out into the country. They smoke some pot. This is by the way, smoke some pot. I'm not a fucking narc. That's what they would call it in 1960.
Smoke some grass. Whoa, this grass is really hitting.
I don't know why that's I decided to do Charlie's voice.
I don't know.
Yeah, they're hanging out. He's reciting poetry to her. He starts reciting some of his own poetry.
Which I think he's just a little bit ahead of his time, because some of this shit would fucking whip ass as death metal lyrics.
Oh yeah,
as like brutal death metal
This
lyrics.
is when I identified with him.
One of his lines that I made a note of is "razor shreds of rat puke fall on my bare arms." Which Peggy Sue doesn't react to particularly well. She's kind of like, that's fucking disgusting. But imagine someone doing it in a death growl.
Yeah, that was me. That was me. Like I'm writing dark stuff in here, and I know that it's dark. I don't know why I'm showing this to a girl in high school.
Yeah. Have you tried death growling it at her?
No, I think that would be worse. I think that would go over worse, you know?
So? I don't know. You never know until you try.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's his poetry's bad. It's funny. I like the bit where like his poetry sucks, and then he's just saying romantic shit to her, and she's like, "What's that from?" And he's like, "Nothing. I just fucking said it." Like he's way.
I've
more,
been there too.
He's way more romantic and way better at this.
There's
when he's not doing his poetry.
There's a limit to how much you can use poetry to impress a girl when you're in high school. There's just a limit.
Yeah.
And he is crossing over that line like crazy.
Yeah. So they fuck.
They fuck. I do want to mention this is clearly shot on a set.
Yes.
And it looks beautiful.
Good
and
looking
it
set.
totally works for this this scene.
Because it's well photographed. That's the thing I was talking about before, where the wide shot here when they're smoking weed, and it's just them in silhouette, and like the rain is coming down, and it's clearly just indoor studio set rain. I was like, this looks fucking incredible. I could watch this for however long it stays in front of me.
Yeah.
Because it's a really well shot set. It's just good cinematography.
And it contributes really well to the film's dreamlike atmosphere, I think.
Yeah, completely agree. That it is recognizably kind of
Yes.
a facade.
Yeah.
So they fuck, and I like the thing. I like the thing that them fucking in the movie is very clearly a thing for her to help her with the shit that she's dealing with her relationship with Charlie. Like, it's this thing where it's like, oh, I always wondered what it would be like if I like did this thing with this guy in high school instead of just getting pregnant and getting married immediately. And she's like, she has the experience. It is not presented in the movie as like bad or wrong of her to want that in any way. And she does it, and that's all she wants from him. And she makes that really clear, which I like. It does feel kind of female empowerment to me in a way, where it's like she has like a sexual need that, you know, and she's like, you're the person I want to fill this, and he consents, and they do it, right? And then she's like, that's all I wanted from you, goodbye, basically. And I'm like, that's, I think, nice for a movie from 1986 that lets like a woman control her sexual autonomy that way.
Sure, it's nice that the movie doesn't treat it negatively
No.
or make you, you know.
It's kind of like the movie's
movie's
it's
in support
basically
of
like,
her.
yeah, it's basically saying good for her.
Yeah.
You know, she should do this. And it's like, yeah, I mean, her husband cheated on her, and she's just like, you know.
Yeah, if you got the whole time travel thing going on, and you don't know if you're alive or dead,
Yeah.
might as well.
Fuck it.
And then
also,
go
she broke up with
save-
Charlie in this timeline, so she's not even cheating on him.
Yeah.
You know?
And then go save JFK.
Yes. Because of JFK. It's the moral thing to do.
I'm gonna go back in time. I'm gonna fuck the high school guy that got away.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna save JFK.
Yes, the beatnik that got away.
The douchebag with a motorcycle.
Yeah. So,
Like screwing James from Twin Peaks. Jesus Christ.
He does have James from Twin Peaks
Yeah.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's sort of like if Bobby Briggs and James were one being. He's
Oh,
kind
God.
he's kind of both of them, because he's a little bit bad boy, but he's also a little bit like the James like greaser thing. Because Bobby is like the aggro bad boy,
Sure.
and he's got a little bit of that too.
James is the sad guy. In the
Yeah, he's like a
motorcycle.
fucking kicked puppy. With an enormous forehead. No shade to that actor. It's just, I mean, he knows it's true. Anyway, so then like the next bit here, we see Nick Cage at the electronics store that he works at for a little bit, and we learn that this is like actually his dad's electronics store, and this is what he's doing the Crazy Charlie commercials for in the future timeline. We see him at work here a little bit. She comes to see him, and they have like a little bit of a relationship talk. He apologizes for being an asshole about the whole like, you wanted to fuck me and I got freaked out thing. And it's a good little two-hander scene between the two of them. This one in the electronics store is maybe the one where Cage is matching Kathleen Turner's energy the most.
Yeah, and they're not acting on two completely different movies.
Planets in totally different solar systems.
Yeah.
It's sort of the moment between the two of them that I like the most, because they go into like this little, I think it's like a little recording booth that they have in the store or something, but it's like this little separate cubicle, and they have this little conversation. I like him apologizing. I like all that stuff. This is some of the stuff with him where I'm like a little bit on Charlie's side, although we'll get to it, but there's a couple moments coming up where I'm like, oh,
You mean when he tries to murder her?
okay, yeah, we can just talk about it now. Because that's pretty soon anyway. Basically what happens between this scene and that is her and Michael go to the doo-wop group, it's an R&B club They go
Yes.
to an R&B club, and Charlie's performing. And this is where we have the thing that we already mentioned earlier, where Michael's like, hey, do you want to join my fucking polygamy farm? And she's like, no, I would not. Take me home now.
There's this cool location called the Spawn Ranch.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go there and listen to the White Album a lot and get some crazy ideas.
We're going to just ride some dune buggies and drop a ton of acid and have a good time. Which is mostly what happened at Spawn Ranch and with the Manson family. It was a lot of riding dune buggies and a lot of dropping acid and just a little bit talking about a race war. Turns out a little bit of talking about a race war, really all you need to then commit heinous crimes. Most of it can be having fun and riding dune buggies.
I'd be in for the dune
But
buggies
if you're
and the
talking
acid.
about a race war a little bit, it's already too much.
You know, guys, I'm gonna peace out. The racing was fun. The acid was awesome. You guys are really chill.
I love.
Don't know how I feel about this race war thing, guys.
I love the fuck parties. Unfortunately, the whole the black man is going to rise up and kill all the white people, and we're gonna live underground and then come out and rule the world.
Charlie, where'd you get that idea from? The Beatles. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna dip.
That's what's not really connecting for me. But so Michael Fitzsimmons wants her to join his family, and she's like, no. So then she goes home, and then this is the thing where Nick Cage sneaks in through her window and contemplates smothering her with a pillow, which is batshit insane for this movie to do, and I don't know why it's here.
Nope. He obviously knows that something's going on with her and Michael.
Yeah.
And his first reaction to that is, I'm gonna.
Oh my god, I'm gonna kill her. Oh my god, I'm gonna kill her. Sorry, that's a We Hate Movies joke. Shout out to the We Hate Movies podcast. But it is very much an oh my god, I'm gonna kill her moment, because he crawls in through her window, grabs a pillow, and is like, should I end this woman's life? No, I'm gonna have a conversation with her. But I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, how did this make final cut of this movie?
I don't know.
It's so crazy, because then the movie wants you to sympathize with him after this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just thinking about when he was trying to kill her with a pillow 10 minutes ago.
This movie wants you to feel like this movie tries to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
And it wants you to be like, oh, they're getting back together. But forget about that whole trying to kill her with a pillow thing.
It's like, well, yeah, he cheated on her and also contemplated murdering her one time.
And he sounds like this. Oh my god, I'm gonna kill her. Oh my god, I'm gonna kill her. Oh, I'm gonna come. Oh, Peggy.
God.
Peggy
Oh,
Sue. Oh, I missed you so much. I'm gonna come.
That's the sex that they have after she gets out of the hospital in this movie.
Well, I don't know if they actually are. That's the thing about the end of this movie that I sort of like, is she is sort of like, I forgive you for the whole Janet thing, and I'm happy that you're our kid's dad, basically. But it's not clearly a thing of like, I'm gonna take you back. Because
I think it totally is.
We'll
get there, but I think it totally is.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, he tries to murder her.
Yeah. Well, doesn't try to. He thinks about it, which is bad enough.
Like Luke in The Last Jedi.
I have never held a pillow and looked at one of my sleeping significant others and thought about it. You know, I feel like even getting that far is... that says a lot about the type of person you're dealing with. It's crazy. And she wakes up and never knows about this. It's just between Nick Cage and the audience. I wonder if that was in the script or if he just did that.
Francis, for this next scene, what if I tried to kill her?
What if I hold a pillow like I'm gonna smother her, but then I decide not to? I think that tells you something really interesting about this guy. So and then she wakes up and he's like, I have to talk to you. Let's go to the basement. Sorry, that's normal Cage voice.
I have to talk to you, but let's go to the basement. Go to the dark and dingy basement.
Yes, and he shakes her violently and yells at her in the basement, which again, I'm like, okay, a lot of goodwill that Charlie is losing here now. But he's basically like, I know you've been like fooling around with Michael Fitzsimmons. And she's like, well, we were broken up anyway, sort of thing. And this is the scene where, this is one of the scenes where she's having a fight with him about future stuff, kind of. And I like that whole element of it. This pretty much ends with them kind of fully breaking up. She's basically like, it's never going to work. We're always going to be like this.
Mhm.
And him being like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And she also says some shit because he wants to be a musician. That's what the whole doo-wop group thing is about. He's got a dream to make it big in music. And she also tells him that his music dreams are going to amount to nothing here, which hurts him a lot. And he leaves. And does not murder her, thankfully. Not today.
Not today. Maybe next time.
Yeah, so we have more shit with Richard after this.
Yeah.
Where so they've been this is a little bit earlier, but they've been plotting about how he's gonna make money in the future.
Yeah.
And she's just like telling him all these things to invest in, and she invents the term high tech, I guess, which is kind of funny. Also, not for nothing, every time she tells him future shit and he like totally buys it, I was just thinking, listen again. Like when she's like in 1969, the first man named Neil Armstrong will set foot on the moon, and he's like, listen again. But so
Listen again. What do you see for Arrakis? Burritos.
I also like when he's
Microchips.
describing the Richard's burrito theory.
Yeah.
He's like, I call it Richard's burrito because burrito is a Mexican food that I had one time in California when my parents took me to Disneyland. And she's from 1986, so Mexican food has gotten more popular in the US. And she's like, I know what a fucking burrito is.
I don't want to go to a past where I can't get carne asada fries.
Yeah. Well, 1960 is not the time for you then.
I guess
my friend.
not.
Burger Shacks, you could get a malt.
I could get a fucking burger for like a nickel.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, take me back. I changed my mind.
Anyway, so she has a scene with Richard here because she's basically deciding if there is a way for me to leave the past, I would like to do that now. I miss my kids. This whole shit with Charlie has really pissed me off, and I'm not having a good time. So she goes to basically say goodbye to Richard.
Yeah.
And is like, I'm gonna find a way to get the fuck out of here.
And he's like, you want to change your destiny? How about we get married?
Yeah, and this is where I'm like, Richard, you fucking worm. You were in this for one thing for the entire time. I don't even know if he believed that she's from the future. I think this might have been the long game from Richard, where he's like, you're crazy, and I can maybe use that to manipulate you into having a relationship with me. Is sort of the vibe I'm getting from this moment of this movie. And I don't like that he tries to get her to marry him.
This girl thinks that she's a time traveler, and she's talking to me and hanging out with me a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe I can hit that.
Yeah. That's really his thing. And he jumps immediately to marriage as well, which is just like, all right, slow down, buddy. How about we fucking go get a malt first? But she's, and I like her reaction to this because this is sort of the thesis of the movie in a way, her reaction to him, which is like, I don't want to marry you, and in fact I don't want to marry anybody. And she says the title of the movie. We get a title drop. She says Peggy Sue got married, and that's it, right? And it's basically what the script is saying, and what she's saying is like, I don't want my life to just be defined by which guy I pick to marry. I want to like be a whole person, and have decisions other than my husband that matter, right? And I'm like, I like that. I wish the movie maybe explored it a little bit more.
I wish it committed to it.
And committed to it at the end.
Yes.
However, I like this moment where she says it.
This movie reminded me a lot of a Martin Scorsese film that I'm actually not a huge fan of, which is New York, New York, with Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli. And the whole thing of that movie is, one, it's very dreamlike and shot very similarly to this. A lot of it's on sound stages, and you know that it's a soundstage, but it works. But it's also about a woman in a relationship with a guy that she should not be in a relationship with.
Yeah.
And it's treated through this lens of melodrama and romance. but what's actually happening in their relationship is very, very dark and very realistic, and that contrasts really interestingly with the aesthetic of the film. Important thing that New York does at the end is that she doesn't get back with him.
Yeah.
And that's what makes that theme land very well in that film that I don't think this movie really commits to.
Another movie that we've talked about, Blue Valentine, does the same thing. Those people shouldn't be in a relationship with each other, and at the end of the movie, you know what? They're not.
Yeah.
And this movie, I agree with you. It does sort of go back on what it's saying.
Mm-hmm.
I maybe wasn't as sure as you that at the end they're going to end up together, because she does have the thing where she's like, no, let's slow down. I need some time. And it does seem like the movie's maybe hedging a little bit and being like, maybe she doesn't take him back, but it definitely does seem like she's going to. And that is kind of a problem.
We're basically at the end here. Peggy goes to see her grandparents.
Yes, because she's basically like, if there's one thing I want to do while I'm still here in the past, it's go see my grandparents, who are dead by the time we're in the 1986 timeline. So she wants to see him again. There's a moment earlier where her grandma calls, and she like is overcome with emotion and is unable to hear her grandma's voice. Mm-hmm. So we get an idea of how much these people mean to her.
There's also a moment here where she writes a song for Charlie because she's like into him again. She's going back and forth and into him again.
We do need to cover this.
It is it's just She Loves You by the Beatles.
Yes, and I think part of it is basically she feels bad for insulting like his music career, and also there's a little bit of a push pull with how she feels about him in the past. Mm-hmm. She's like, I have all the future baggage about you cheating on me and stuff, but also I'm kind of charmed by you. I am in love with you. So yes, she gives him She Loves You by the Beatles as an original song that she wrote for him. And there is a very funny bit of him coming up to her and being like,
well, Peggy Sue, I read your song is not too bad for your first try, but of course I changed all the yas to oohs. She loves you, ooh, ooh, ooh.
It's very funny. I like that bit.
Yeah, I like it too.
Yeah.
Then she goes to see her grandparents, and her grandma is psychic.
Yeah. And knows exactly when she's gonna die, which is creepy as hell. And then her grandpa is a wizard.
So the line is something like she's gonna go with grandpa to one of his lodge meetings.
Yeah.
And grandma doesn't know what happens at those lodge meetings. And my mind is like, oh,
gay stuff.
Grandpa's in the KKK.
Oh, I see. We were on very different.
Okay,
I was thinking gay stuff.
You said wizard. I was thinking grand wizard.
He shows up, and we see that he is a wizard.
Yeah.
But the KKK thing did cross my mind, where I was like, it is 1960. Segregation is still happening. But then also when she was like, I don't want to know what goes down at those lodge meetings, I was like, gay stuff. These guys are blowing each other.
Yeah.
Which might be happening as well as what we see in the movie. Maybe they're also blowing each other. But I once you see their outfits, it's pretty clear that they're not white supremacists. They're just regular weirdos.
who think that they've been awaiting the arrival of a time traveler.
They say that their order was founded by a time traveler. Like there has been another time traveler like 600 years ago. But before we get to all the like lodge shit, there is kind of a nice sweet scene that we slow down for.
Yeah.
With Peggy and her grandparents, where again some of the movies like bigger things that it's maybe trying to talk about a little bit come up. Where it's like, yeah, like what is life about? And her grandma is talking about like, I think more now she's in her 70s or whatever. She's like, I think more now about things that happened 50 years ago than things that happened today. And it's like, yeah, to some extent, like I'm living in the past, but also like those are the things that made me me. And like, that's what life is. And there's like some stuff in this script here that's very poetic and kind of is dealing with some of that stuff. And I think it's a nice moment. And I also think it is shot and scored very well.
I agree.
Yeah.
There's also a line here that her grandma says about her strudel keeping the family together, which will come up at the end.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's a really good scene. I loved her reaction to hearing her grandmother's voice on the phone earlier in this movie, so I like that we get a bit of a payoff with that.
Yeah.
And then we go to Grandpa's lodge meeting.
And they're wearing
like purple D&D nerd wizard outfits.
The fucking wildest hats you've ever seen.
And they think she's the Lisan al-Gaib.
Lisan al-Gaib. They're wearing the weirdest hats of all time.
Yeah.
There is even a line calling it out where she's like, "Oh, do you have to wear that hat?" And he's like, "Well, it wouldn't be a lodge meeting if there were no hats." And it's like, is that a KKK reference?
I think just all cults and organizations and
Have to have fun hats.
Yeah, there's got to be hats.
The Catholic Church.
Yeah.
They got hats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so they tried to do a magical ceremony here where they send her back to 1986.
Where she takes the water of life. No.
And there is a moment that seems Lovecraftian to me in this, in that it's an order of like old educated white men.
This is a movie directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
In this,
Oh my god.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a group of old white academics, it seems like, in this lodge meeting, in their weird costumes, calling out to like, "Oh, ancient one, transport her soul through the waters of time and place it in the correct." And I'm like, this feels like we're calling upon Cthulhu right now. It felt like so bizarrely out of place, where I was like, this feels like the Dunwich horror. What is happening in this movie right now? And like, it's apparently starts working because the candles are like blowing out and the lights are flickering and it's like all going crazy and shit. And then like the lights go out. And this guy who's leading the ceremony, which, by the way, I don't know who this actor is, but amazing voice. So he's like, "Oh, somebody get the lights." And they turn the lights back on and Peggy Sue's gone. And they're like, "Great, guys, we did it. Time to play cards." And as you all know here, it's strip poker. Once you get down.
Strip poker, then strip twister, and then
And then we all suck each other's dicks.
then we all turn the lights off and play Guess Who's in My Mouth.
And that's normal activities at this lodge meeting.
And then we go and commit hate crimes because we're also the KKK.
Oh God. But it turns out Peggy Sue has not been sent back to the future.
She's been
which, by the
kidnapped
way,
by Nick Cage.
Back to the Future.
Fuck you.
It's big old similarities between this movie and that movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, and Back to the Future did come out first, so you know. But Nick Cage has abducted her and is basically like, "Oh, I need you back," and he's being very toxic and weird here, where he has snagged her and is kind of yelling at her that he's gonna change and that he loves her and stuff, and they get into a fight here. This is where she mentions Janet and he's like, "I don't even know who Janet is."
He proposes to her and gives her this locket, and it's photos of them as kids, but she thinks that it's the kids their kid that that they're gonna have.
Yeah, because they have two kids, a boy and a girl. And she thinks it's baby photos of their kids. And she's like, "How did you get these?" And he's like, "It's us." And this is like the turning point for her character, where basically she realizes, oh, all of this shit that I went through with Charlie is kind of worth it because I have these two amazing kids, is kind of the thing.
Yeah, I guess. They have sex here.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And then she wakes up in the hospital in the future.
Yeah, which, by the way, on her 18th birthday, her and Charlie had sex and she got pregnant with her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like basically allowing her past to repeat itself. She's committing and being like, "No, that was worth it. I love my kid. And so I want her to be conceived. So I'm just going to do the thing." You know? Yeah. And she wakes up, in the hospital.
And we get to see Nick Cage in that old age makeup yet again.
Yes.
And
looking like a Romero zombie.
Yes. And they're, she's in the hospital after falling over at the reunion, and he's been staying at her bedside for days on end.
There's also like some vague, like you hear like disembodied doctor voices while she's waking up, and they're saying something about a heart condition. Her heart stopped. They had like an irregular rhythm. So like she like died for a second. Which lends a lot of funny context to all of her jokes about like, "Oh, maybe I'm dead," because it's like I think she technically was, which is kind of fun. But anyway,
yeah. And Charlie talks about wanting to change and get back with her.
Yeah,
and also
he's left Janet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a book written by Michael Fitzsimmons that has a dedication to Peggy in it.
To Peggy Sue in a Starry Night.
So there's this implication that maybe she actually did go back in time and change something.
Yeah.
And then she's like, hey, why don't we have dinner and I'll make strudel.
Yes, which is to your point that the movie is unambiguously saying they probably are going to get back together. That's, I think, that the thing that is the biggest indicator of that. Yeah, is that she's going to make the strudel because it's what keeps the family together or whatever. And it's like she's not right to get back together with Charlie. Charlie as a character, I don't fully unilaterally hate necessarily. There are some redeeming moments for his character throughout this film. That being said, more bad than good with Charlie, and I'm not thrilled about Peggy Sue revisiting that source of trauma and terror.
Yeah, and I don't think the movie really sticks the landing with this ending.
Yeah.
I think it's too happy and rosy and saccharine, and I don't know that it's really earned this ending.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It almost feels like they didn't know how to end it.
Yeah.
Which the whole wizard thing with Grandpa also kind of feels that way, where it's like, well, maybe we could end it this way, right? Maybe there's wizards. Maybe one of the ancient ones appears. You know, it just kind of feels like they were like throwing shit at a wall, and this was just the last idea that they had, and they were like, well, that's it, you know. Yeah, she wakes up and takes him back, I guess, you know.
Yeah. That's Peggy Sue Got Married.
Yeah, that's Peggy Sue Got Married, but directed by Francis Ford COPPOLA.
Directed by Francis Ford Coppola is the correct way to say that.
That's right.
Justus.
Yeah.
Is it the greatest movie ever made?
No. No, it's not. I had some issues with this one. It's weird and offbeat, and I mean that in a positive way to some degree, but also it is like tonally inconsistent and kind of confused, and weirdly at an hour and 43 minutes feels a little too long.
Yeah, I had difficulty sitting through this in one sitting.
Yeah.
Like I kept stopping it to get up and go to the bathroom and go do something. And
Yeah.
it felt really long.
In like the second act, I feel like we just kind of slump a little bit. Like it opens pretty hard. Like the opening is probably my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah.
And then it kind of like, I don't know, it just feels like we start dragging a little bit around like the hour mark. And I was like, if we could have gotten this down to a tight 90, you know? Some of the shit with Nick Cage's character, like, I just wish that we felt a little bit more. If they have to end it with, oh, they get back together and it's a happy ending, I wish that like the movie made him earn it more. Because he doesn't really have to do anything. The onus is all on her to like learn and grow from revisiting her past, and not on him to like change his behavior, which is like weird and problematic and dumb. That being said, some fun performances here. We didn't talk about him very much, but I do like Jim Carrey just as a bit part.
Yeah.
As Walter Getz. He's doing a lot of like background gags and shit in this, and he's very, very funny, very charismatic. It's fun to see him so young and not as the focus of a film.
Agreed.
Fun to see him as part of an ensemble. Like you said, the music's great. I think it's very well shot. I think there's very good control of color on screen here. And those are things that I love to see. But that being said, it's a movie that while I enjoyed it, I had several issues with, and it's not the greatest movie ever made. David, is Peggy Sue Got Married the greatest movie ever made?
Fuck no.
Yeah, no.
That sounded more negative than I meant to be. But no, in no reality is this the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah.
I'll start with my positives. I think Coppola does a very, very good job directing this thing. I think it looks beautiful. I think the music's great. I think Kathleen Turner does really elevates this script.
Oh yeah.
And Cage is entertaining.
Like you said, he's never boring.
He's never boring. And there's some fun gags throughout this movie, some fun jokes and some fun lines. But this just doesn't. This rings very thematically hollow to me, because I don't think it ever demonstrates the theme of, you know, your past and your mistakes have made you who you are, and you should accept them and move forward. I don't think it ever really demonstrates that theme very well. And her relationship with Charlie, I don't think we see, I don't think Charlie ever changes, but more importantly, we never see another side of Charlie. We never see that other side of Charlie that makes her take him back. And I'm left at the end of this movie kind of the way that you were at the end of Blue Valentine, where it's like, these are two people who should have never been together. Their relationship has been loveless this whole time. It was built on young love and passion, and I don't feel any emotional connection to this ending. And this movie is wanting to make me feel good about this ending, I think. It's just kind of a big mess.
Yeah.
But that all being said, it is definitely entertaining and strange and unique and an interesting little chapter in the careers of Francis Ford Coppola and Nick Cage. So I did have a decent enough time with this, but not the greatest movie ever made.
But sort of worth the price of admission just as like a curiosity.
Yeah.
And also it's not a bad movie.
No. And Cage's performance is, I don't know if we've accurately conveyed how insane this performance is.
It's batshit. It's off the wall. But like we can't, because he's Cage and only he can do it.
And it's fun and it's entertaining and it feels like it totally does not work for this movie.
Yeah.
For me.
It's batshit insane. And also it's sort of worked for me regardless, but I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I was just thinking as you were giving your verdict? I think one of the problems with the ending of this movie, I think this is a movie for boomers, right? Because it's like, oh, let's revisit our glory years in high school in 1960, right? And now it's 1986, and we're all on diet.
Sure.
We're all on diet pills and
doing coke in the bathroom.
And doing coke in the bathroom. And we all went from being hippies to yuppies or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the ending, where it's basically like, well, the guy you married might not be perfect, but you owe it to your kids to try and make it work out. You know, that feels like a really boomer brain moral, right? Where it's like, oh, stay together for the kids. You know, it's better if we're all a family than if you give up on this. And I'm like, maybe that's what's ringing hollow for you and I, is that it's like, that's a message that maybe boomers would have gravitated towards a little bit more. And for us, we're like, no, like she's unhappy with him. Like,
And this isn't a huge issue, honestly, but this is, the 80s were the time of 50s nostalgia, the way that now we're in 80s nostalgia and we're transitioning to 90s nostalgia.
Which is very strange for me.
Yeah.
Where like suddenly people who are like much, much younger than me are like really into like MCR and like Slipknot. Like suddenly the children like Slipknot. And I'm like, this is very unsettling for me.
But I've never vibed with 50s or 60s nostalgia. Because like this movie, and in this movie especially, it's so romanticized, and like there's no mention of race. There's nary a black person in this film, other than the
closest we get is when they're at the R&B club, and Charlie is there singing at the R&B club, and Peggy Sue says, "Oh, I never knew you sang at R&B clubs." And the subtext there is, "I didn't know you hung out with black people." But the movie doesn't even have the nerve to say that and make it a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The subtext is basically like, "Oh, hey, you're more like racially conscious than I thought you were." You're more comfortable in in diverse spaces than I initially realized. But it's like the movie doesn't actually say that. She's just like, "Oh, I didn't know you sang in R&B clubs," and that's as much as we explore race in this movie.
Yeah,
so I agree.
And I'm sure that movies that are released today that are set in the 80s also don't explore the dark side of the 80s
gloss
as much
over
as they
some
should.
shit. Yeah,
but like I don't know, it's just so it's so sweet and saccharine, and doesn't have any real depth or subtext to it.
Yeah,
with its depiction of the 50s and the 60s. So I was like kind of turned off by that.
Yeah.
So not the greatest movie ever made, but Justus, next week, there's gonna be really no tension about how we feel about the film we're talking about. There's gonna be no question, because God, we're talking about Mad Max Fury Road.
What a lovely day! We're talking about Mad Max Fury Road, multi-Oscar award winner.
Oscar award winning Mad Max Fury Road.
Fury Road, a movie that Countess Pod does not like.
And she is incorrect
She's
about.
wrong.
She's so wrong about that.
I hesitate to say that my wife has wrong opinions. However, disliking Mad Max Fury Road is a wrong opinion.
Absolutely. So George Miller is taking us back to the wasteland with Furiosa.
Director of Happy Feet, George Miller. Isn't it weird that he has two main franchises where he's directed all the installments? I think there's only 2 Happy Feet movies.
There's only 2 Happy Feet.
But he directed both of them.
Yeah.
Once he starts a franchise, he's like, no, nobody makes one of those movies unless it's me, motherfucker. Because hasn't he directed every Mad Max movie?
Yes.
Yeah. He just like holds on to those.
That's his 2 lanes: post-apocalyptic,
Or
car
penguins.
fucker movies, and penguins, dancing penguins.
Cartoon penguins. Anyway, we will not be talking about Happy Feet next week. We will be talking about Mad Max Fury Road.
So spray your face with that chrome spray paint shit.
Yep.
And join us
in Valhalla
as we die historic on a Fury Road. Until then, tweet about the show, tell your friends about the show, spread the word about the show, leave us a review. Thank you all for your support. We love you so much, and we really appreciate you guys tuning in to us every week. And in the meantime, we will leave you, as always, with our trademark sign-off.
Later, dipshits!
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast. And if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.